Welcome to Rubber Band Live, the Australian recruitment and talent acquisition vodcast and podcast. I am Eden Haddock, your host and the creator of Rubber Band, the recruitment network for all. Let's go live. And we are live. Welcome viewers and listeners to today's episode of Rubber Band Live, which is in graduate recruitment. Yes means maybe. Learn how to win the hearts and minds of early career talent. Now, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I live and work on, the Wadawurrung and Dja Dja Wurrung people. I recognise their continuing connection to the land and waterways. I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and I would like to extend this to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I am incredibly fortunate today to be joined by the amazing Tim Way from the Career Conversation, and we are going to be talking about graduate recruitment and learning how to win the hearts and minds of early career talent. So Tim, thank you so much for joining. How are you?
I am great, Eden. This is equally wonderful to be here, taking a bucket list item to make it onto Rubber Band. So I'll be having a glass of something special tonight. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So great to join you. And everyone out there that is watching, whether you're watching on LinkedIn or YouTube, we do have a comments box. So pop your comments in that chat box. They will feed through to us and we'd love to answer any of your questions that come through, any comments that come through, or even just pop up your name and let us know who you are. We would love to see you today. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Now, Tim, I always think with any stream that I do, I think it's really important that we get to know you a little bit to start with. So, Tim, can you tell us a little bit about, yourself and your career and all of the wonderful things that make up the Tim Way that I see before me today?
Of course, very happy to share that. So I'm coming to you here. I'm sitting in Melbourne. Melbourne's sort of home city and town for me. I'm 52. I know you and I don't look a day over 30, but that's the reality of age creeping up. I'm a dad to an amazing teenager, 14-year-old girl, a wonderful wife who also works in HR. And career-wise, I started, my first career was in the services. I was in the army, funnily enough, and did that for a few years over in the UK. Fell into a RPO company. That brought me to Melbourne after a few years. Then I went to Asia, lived in Asia for 10 years and worked in sort of talent and HR roles. Through that, I've always had an interest in the career and really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I was getting fed up with making thousands of people redundant over in Asia. And came up with the Career Conversation a few years ago, and that's evolved. And it's a great little business with a fantastic team that I'm involved in running now.
Fantastic. Well, I can't wait to hear more about it. Loving seeing you there, Belinda. Thank you so much for introducing yourself. Belinda Sanger from Better Health Network. You're loving your lunch and learn. So great to see you, Belinda. Thanks for joining today. Look, let's talk more about the Career Conversation. So, I suppose what I really want to delve into is really around the career conversation, the knowledge and expertise in graduate and early career engagement. So, what do you guys do?
Yeah, look, our heritage wasn't that. So it's in our name, the Career Conversation. And I'm not going to try and give some sort of pitch here about what we do, but I guess where our knowledge sort of evolves and our heritage comes from. We started by creating short form content to help people navigate career conversations, think candidates and hiring leaders. And that's where we started a few years ago. And companies said, great content, but that's not my problem. How do I get it to people? How do I, there's lots of content out there. How do I intervene and how do I support and help people at those sort of moments that matter? So it became really clear to us then we needed to learn a lot more about that personalization, timing, user experience, use of technology, all of those elements. And so we sort of doubled down and learned and spent more time developing those elements of a solution. And a customer then said, hey, this would be great to point at my graduates. Could we use this to keep my graduates warm? That was a few years ago. And we said, great. So that was our sort of start, heritage, and entry. And then another customer said that would be great for graduates. And of course, as you do with a small business, then you're like, well, we're expert in graduates. Of course, we weren't, but another customer and another customer. So we've spent more time learning about that audience. And now most of our work is spent in that early careers space. The essence of it is we've said, look, let's us understand the journey somebody goes on from the point of application through to getting ready for work experience, through to evaluating offers, through to getting ready for day one, through those early months. That's quite a winding road for an individual to go on. And so we've sort of learning and learned a lot about what's going on in the heads and hearts of early career talent as they go through that journey. And then how do we create the engagement, the content, the campaigns that support them as they're making their way through that. So that's sort of what we do. And we've got all of the elements and ingredients that help companies more easily go and have those sort of connections with them.
It's such an interesting space, early careers. And I must confess, until perhaps 12 months ago, it hasn't been a space that I've really worked in. And recently, through the wonderful team at MaxMe, I have run facilitation for high school students. I've assisted an amazing recruitment agency called Blake Oliver Consulting with a graduate recruitment event in the insurance industry. I've spent a little bit of time with Lou from Brightworks talking about what she does in terms of internships. And look, it's fascinating because it really has evolved and changed in terms of our approach. So I'm really keen to hear from you as an expert in this field around, your perception of what the big trends are. What's happening that's changing how, I guess, organizations are approaching attraction, recruitment, engagement, onboarding, all of those things in terms of the talent acquisition lifestyle. Like what are you observing?
But there's certainly a lot going on. And look, rather than being an expert in all of those areas, there's other experts as well. This is not sort of saying that we cast a net across all of it. At a high level, if I think about it and what we certainly see, or what are we responding to, there's a skills shortage. There has been for a while. There still is. And so organizations are grappling and working out, how do I staff my business? How do I have the skills I need now and in the future? And that's sort of getting higher and higher up the sort of agenda, if you like, from the C-suite and, the investment they need to make to solve that problem. So in that sense, you have a skills shortage. You have early career talent help solve some of that. They're an important element of that labor pyramid. They're a resource type that is affordable, trainable, versatile. And so they provide part of that solution. Companies are working out, do I build, buy, borrow, bot? I think the phrase is, how am I going to solve for that? So early career talent absolutely are in demand because they are part of the solution and a valued part of the solution. So you've got those dynamics, if you like, that exist. The world of work's changing. Careers in general are changing. Why we work, how we work, where we work. All of some of those elements, that deal that we have, that reevaluating the employment deal, so from an organizational perspective, that's changing. And early career people starting their careers have the same consideration. They're starting and entering the workforce, perhaps with some different views and perceptions and hopes and aspirations about what they want from work and from the companies that they're working for. So if you sort of put all those together, there's a lot going on. And I think that creates two things. You get opportunity in all of that and also some friction. So it's a really interesting space, sector, area with lots of moving parts to it. I wouldn't claim to be an expert in all of them, but there's certainly a lot happening there. And at the backdrop to it, you've got a resource type that's in demand, has choice and options about what they're going to do and want to do, and organizations that are also sort of grappling and changing shape and evolving a little bit in relation to what they offer and how they offer that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And, obviously I run a online recruitment network group. I'm a big part of, and I love another group, which is called Grad Hero Hub on Facebook. hats off to that team. It's an amazing group. But one of the things that I see a lot is, I guess, people discussing how they tackle, I guess, graduates reneging offers. And, you mentioned that early career talent do have a lot of opportunity out there. They're less laser focused on, this is the one organization that I will move forward with. There's graduate recruitment everywhere. There's opportunity everywhere. It's something that's quoted a lot. It's reported a lot. We read a lot about that. LinkedIn content, you see it a lot, reneging offers and have the frustrations around that. Like, what do you feel about that? Is that something we need to be focused on? Is it a big consideration?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. It's certainly the metric that people seem to grab hold of, or a metric that is often sort of quoted or referenced, and you can, and talked about. In some of the work that we do, particularly around some of that sort of keep warm or in that engagement activity, it would be wonderful for me to sit here and say I can guarantee, or I can give you some surety that I will move the needle on reneges significantly down. That's what people want. Yeah, that would be music to their ears, and it's black and white from a business case perspective as well. So if I could do that, I could sort of tick and say, hey, Nirvana, happy days. And look, it's certainly a sort of a consideration of something that you want to aim for, but I think there's more at play. If you look at the graduate as the buyer, so that's what sometimes we do. We look at it and say they're the buyer. Their buying journey is different. The buying experience and journey that they're going on. You mentioned it there. Choice. They have choice in lots of things. Choice about where they're getting their information: first hand, second hand, third hand. Choice about when they start. It's not just on graduation. Some people are starting earlier than that. Choice in relation to the nature of sort of companies they might consider. It's not all corporate graduate schemes. There's many more jobs that are early and entry level, if you like, early career level for organizations. Not everybody wants to go onto a white collar graduate scheme per se in its own. So there's a lot of choice for them that's there. There's lots of opportunity. It's easier to apply. Make the experience one click. So that somebody can just look at it, click and apply, and then be frustrated that they've clicked 5 times and applied to more places. That's what happens. As a result of that. And so it stands to reason. People are gonna it's easier and perhaps easier to sort of find, explore, apply, be considered for more options and opportunities, and carry on evaluating as well as you're going. I think giving a yes, and that's in our title here, giving a yes to an offer perhaps doesn't have as much conviction, emotional tie that it may have done X years ago. It's a step in the process. But not everybody does that mean that I've fully bought yet. It's a bit like, imagine being able to sort of sign up for 3 holidays and then decide which one you're going to go on.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Without any recourse, without losing your deposit or anything else like that, And during that time, then, what do you want to do is find out which one's right and best, etc. And people are influenced, yes, in what they hear about the brand and a company and an organization, of course. But there's also other factors. Salary things particularly might change. A friend might make a decision to go somewhere. All these sorts of things are factors for individuals. I think organizations are trying to, source from more diverse channels, different universities and colleges, etc. So all of those things are factors. I think really, therefore, rather than how do I remove reneges, it's kind of the question is a little bit more, how can I help people earlier and more quickly make a better decision, make the right decision, and how can I then make those that have, if I'm the person they've made the decision about, feel comfortable about sticking with that, that they've made the right one and stay with it. That's kind of a little bit more of the focus.
Well, look, it's really interesting because I think a lot of what you covered there, it's a hot topic in talent acquisition full stop, or recruitment full stop, when it comes to candidate experience and how people move through the candidate life cycle. So, what are they looking for? Like, what help, support, information? What do they want as they're going through that process? important to them?
I mean, it's not to try and simplify it, but there's two emotions, dominant emotions that, we validated this through lots of questions, but you probably didn't need to. It's kind of to a degree obvious but two emotions that graduates feeling as they're transitioning from that sort of campus college to the workplace. They're excited and they're nervous. And maybe that's blindingly obvious. Yeah, they're pretty common, I guess, for anybody that might be starting a new role, is likely to experience those two emotions, being excited and being nervous. The difference, and I'd say the couple of the differences is they haven't experienced it before. You're my age, and I'm like, hey, I'm starting another job, and it's my 6th or 8th or 5th one on my journey of my career. I've been through that cycle before. Yeah, I might have those emotions, but I've also got something to reference and think about. So graduates for the first time haven't typically been through that experience before. They don't know how it plays out. And therefore, they are very open as well to listening and hearing and support and influences that they can get. Their heads are turned by those, and they're listening for them. So there's that element. And the other one is they have much longer to think about it. Whilst people are hiring in different rhythms, and the sort of seasons of early career hiring, from what we can see, are evolving and change a little bit. It's still probably one of the longest in your career hiring cycle will be that sort of often that graduate one. It could be 6, 9, 12, 18 months, even longer, long. So you have a long time to sort of sit with those emotions, and be with those and go on that journey, if you like. Whereas normally someone else accepting a job, you lucky if you get 2 days in between, sort of finishing on a Thursday and start on a Monday, etc. You haven't got too long to sit with it. So we use that as an anchor point for some of our content, if you like. Like, okay, how do we respond to those two emotions, and support and engage with the individuals based on that?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing here, because, the majority of talent acquisition processes, it is very fast, absolutely, because organizations are wanting to hire people really quickly. They've got a vacancy in their team because someone's left, or a newly created role that is significant enough that they need to bring someone in. They need to bring, more hands on deck to actually get whatever tasks they are completed. But with graduates, you've got a much longer period from the point of even pre-engagement through to them actually starting. So do you feel that we need to have a different, I suppose, talent acquisition strategy in terms of candidate experience for graduates than we do for our standard talent? I suppose standard's a terrible word to use. I do apologize, but for our, what do you think? Like, does it need to be completely different, or can it be mirrored? Like, how would you approach that?
Look, I'm sure there's some TA experts, and there maybe if there's anyone in the chat listening, do chime in and share that are there. I think certainly you're seeing people breaking with that. Typically, early career hiring, the sort of season for it. You're hiring a year out often. You're engaging before that. People may come on internships, and then you convert those internships, and so the start dates may be 9, 12 months away. We're seeing that, that people are breaking that and hiring closer to day one, and students themselves taking time out or not taking time out, etc. So I think that seasonality of it, or that long lead time, is changing a little bit, for sure. But you're right. There will be some elements that will be different to, let's say, your lateral hiring or your experienced hiring. Because of that, what do we need to do differently? Yeah, and that sort of engagement strategy would look different if you've got to connect with someone and engage with them over 6, 9, 12 months. You don't really have that consideration necessarily in lateral hiring. What I would say is actually everyone is generally across both of those categories trying to think about candidate experience, hiring leader experience, how you support individuals as they're transitioning, work readiness, confidence as they arrive. Those principles apply to both, potentially, but how you set yourself up to support them may be different. And that's probably something that there's a gap in early career hiring to some extent. One of the reasons there's a sort of, I guess, an opportunity for what we do a little bit is that some of that engagement activity doesn't have clear ownership. It falls between a gap. It's not
Yeah.
owned by somebody, and therefore sometimes it doesn't always have the resources, the capacity, the capability aligned to it and assigned to it to make it effective.
Absolutely. Really great comment from Paula. Hi, Paula. Thanks so much for joining. Why should it be any different? We do still need to get back to every single one of them, and we can. And I completely agree. I mean, providing feedback and providing an outcome should not be any different, but it's more the touch points along the way, because you've got a lengthier process with graduate recruitment than you do with your either white collar or blue collar fast recruitment processes. Really great comment, Paula. Thank you so much for sharing. Excellent. I've just read the other side of that as well, Paula. Really, really great insights as well. Thank you so much. Now, I want to talk about Gen Z. As I mentioned, I've spent a little bit of time with Gen Z recently, and it's not my generation, as we mentioned earlier, Tim. We won't. I won't divulge my age, but I will say over 40, and I'm not Gen Z. But, we hear a lot about their characteristics, and, what we're talking about here is capturing their hearts and minds. So, I'm keen to hear about their hopes and fears. They have differences in their approaches and expectations. Is this what you see? Are we dealing with fundamentally, different expectations from Gen Z than we are from our generation?
Not in all areas, but look, let me say, yes, differences, absolutely. I think there are. And that's because there's significant differences in the experience that they've had. So, if you, particularly post-pandemic sort of world, and I think some of the college and campus approaches, have retained a lot of the sort of remote aspects of engagement and working and studying, etc. I've got quite a few friends or acquaintances who have got children and kids at uni, etc. And a lot of them say, "Hey, I could be doing this in my spare room. I'm in uni in Tassie, but I don't see anyone or touch anyone I don't need to if I didn't want to." So I think the experience is different. And there are skills that are innate and to that generation versus those that perhaps need to be learned and supported. I think there's often a bit of, we catch up at different events, and there's often a bit of middle-aged eye rolling, sort of, yikes, really, if we got to teach them that. But I think that's a bit of, as I reflect on it, I'm probably guilty of that. But then as I reflect on it, it's really just being a crusty old fart, really, from a sort of, mindset perspective. Let me give you a lived example for me. I'm 52. I've spent quite a few years working in and around corporate environments. And let me blow my own trumpet. I've done a half decent job of learning how to get stuff done there. I have someone working in our team. We have a couple of people working in our team who are Gen Z by generation team members. They'll think nothing of looking at a work problem, approaching something, using their initiative and going off, investigating that, recording a Loom video and sending it to me and saying, "Here you go, Tim, have a look, listen and watch this and tell me what you think."
Yeah.
And I watch it and I think, wow, not all, everything's not right in it necessarily, but the approach and the initiative and how they've then shared and communicated that with me. Of course, my old-fashioned response is like, that's great. Let's get a good old-fashioned meeting in the diary where I can sort of give you and share my feedback and my knowledge and insight of what I think is right or correct and what we do next with it, because that's comfortable for me. What I need to do is actually be able to look at the Loom, learn how to use that, add comments to it, record my own message and send it back. Yeah. That would be easier to do. It would take less time. It would be more efficient. But it's hard for me. That's harder. That's a change I've got to make. And so I think we're grappling here with some of those elements that are here. It's great, and I feel good about being sort of pushed and forced to do that. I think my resistance to that change may be greater than their readiness to learn new things and pick up some of the etiquette elements and etc. that they haven't experienced yet. So yeah.
It's look, I think it's fun to learn, right? Like if I reflect back when I was in the corporate world, like a lot of things in terms of advances in technology, I would tap into, and I'm not sure if he's out there, but my team member Yash, who's a close friend now because he was Gen Z, and he could just pick up technology immediately. So anything that needed enhancement or improvement, or anything that I needed to tackle that involved technology, I would say, could you have a look at this? Because I've got nowhere to start. And now that I'm on my own and and having to pick it all up myself, it's really exciting. So I think we need to be more comfortable, as you said, in terms of our mindset, and kind of change our approach and embrace the technology that Gen Z embrace and the way, they like to work, because we've got to have a growth mindset as well, right? And I think it's really, really important. I really love a comment that's come up from my lovely friend Alana Bennett. Hello, Alana. In terms of connection and relationships, Alana mentioned that we're in a loneliness epidemic, and we really do need to intentionally craft experiences that connect grads to their peers, leaders, and organisation, and that can have a huge impact on engagement. What do you feel about that, Tim?
Yes, I mean, one of the absolutely. I'm just reading it as well. One of the things, we do lots of validation and questions and ask what else, or what is it that you want, if you like, what's important and valued to you. And one of the things that comes through high on that list all the time is connection with others. They want to be connected to the group of individuals that they're starting with. They want to be able to see, feel, hear, engage with that cohort. Sounds easy, but it's still quite hard to organize, or for some organizations to feel that they can, in a safe way, put them in an environment where that can be done. And I love Alana's point particularly there too, about the sort of managers, mentors, and buddies. The relationship that they have and the role that they have there too is significant. And again, makes sense to get the purpose and practice and conviction into that is still quite hard. Anything involving sort of some leaders and others, we find there's still just sort of barriers to time to make some of that happen. But really good points.
Absolutely. And we talked a little bit earlier, I guess, around candidates reneging offers, and Kelly has joined us today from Grad Hero Hub that we've already mentioned we're a huge fan of. Hello, Kelly. Talking about when grads accept multiple offers and tell each employer that they are their first preference, all of that kind of stuff, and the struggle that, a lot of talent teams face when, last minute reneges happen. They've given you the impression that they're really engaged and committed to starting. I mean, how do we approach this? Because that's a whole nother scenario. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, look, Kelly, thanks very much. And Kelly, layers and years of experience there. And to that point, I mean, I don't have as they wouldn't either, a sort of magic wand of those. You're trying to almost give them the opportunity of choice there, and say, look, for all of us, let's make it easy for you, or let's at least make it acceptable for you if you are evaluating and making a decision and changing that and not picking us. It's much better to know, and frustrating if you're then sort of told, or you certainly have a belief in something, and someone sort of changes the behavior there. I think there isn't. So there's no point in me sort of saying, hey, there's a magic way of solving that. I think what we're talking about here, all of that, though, is that consistency of engagement with them. I think that certainly provides more of a place, an environment, a forum where you are more likely to sort of flush that out and create a sort of safe space and a relationship where you're perhaps more likely to be able to validate and understand that. We also check with some of our campaigns. You're able to see who's engaging with your content. There's no direct. We haven't done the data yet. Says a direct correlation, but we're able to sort of see who's engaged, see who's clicking, see who's connecting, asking some questions about some things as well. So we often try and sort of narrow the audience down with some of those campaigns, rather than 50 or 100 or 300. there may well be 20 or 30 that feel a little bit more disengaged, and perhaps that's a better or a smaller audience that you can go and engage and perhaps pick up the phone to.
That's really interesting. And I love, thank you so much for this comment, Fiona Turk, and thank you so much for joining us today. You know, we're talking about a generation that is very digital savvy, right? We tend to have an assumption that they like to engage using digital platforms. And Fiona's mentioned that there can be a challenge to create that connection if they're spread across the country. And virtual platforms seem to not work from an engagement prospect. So I think we often assume that they will work, and, you know, having the face-to-face or in-person interaction is less important for Gen Z because we know how savvy they are with things like social media and technology. But for some reason, they often don't seem to work. Like, what's your thought around that? Because that's quite complex, really.
Yeah, a lot of our campaigns and programs have a balance. They're sort of digital first, if you like. They're sort of digitally activated, and the nature of some of that engagement has more of a sort of digital feel and flavor to it. And obviously that, you know, that does gives you the ability to sort of scale and connect with people in different places on platforms and forms and formats, etc. So you know, you can, you know, tick certain boxes in being able to do that, but obviously then, you know, it is not as personalized, and people do want some of that human connection. I think there's a lot that goes on here. You know, I'm coming at some of this from an engagement perspective, but if you think about that journey, you know, the evaluation, the selection, the face-to-face events, the other elements. So there's potential for lots of human touch points as well. And I would certainly agree that they're valued by the graduate community. I spoke to someone in Tasmania the other day. She said, love the human, the fairs, the careers fairs, to be able to go along, speak to people, connect with them, directly have a conversation with them, etc. So it's going to be a balance. And I think part of that evaluation for any team or organization is like, okay, what's the journey that we have? What's our duration? Where are we with tools, people, physicality? Budget's always a consideration. You know, where are we going to spend our dollars and place our bets? And where is some of that human intervention going to be most helpful for us?
Absolutely. Alana agrees. She's popped a comment up as well around balance. So designing for intention and to co-design with the grads to experiment in this space until you get that balance right. Alana, I think that's really, really sound advice as well. So tell me, Tim, we've covered off some of the challenges there. Like what are, in your mind, some key challenges for teams who are wanting to improve how they engage with their graduate candidates? I mean, is there anything else that our teams need to be considering?
Teams are doing great things, period. You know, so rather than saying, hey, there's lots of misses, etc. I think three that come through, and you know, these are may apply in part or in all. A lot of some of the engagement activity that we find hasn't got clear ownership. You know, you may in a bigger company have access to brand teams or EVP resources, etc. Most people have got stuff sort of top of funnel from a traction perspective, but that ongoing engagement, there is sometimes a question of who owns that. And you know, I think there's quite a few individuals that are sort of picking it up as a side hustle. You know, the TA team, that's a part of our remit and scope as well. And that just means it's hard. If someone doesn't sort of clearly own it, or there isn't some accountability for it, it can be quite hard to generate and sustain the momentum and focus on that. So that would be one element of sort of ownership. The other one is content, curating and creating good content. It's hard. You know, we all know that. You know, I don't know how you find. You run a business and lots of different dimensions to it, and you produce some fantastic content, and to do it in the sort of the forms and formats that you feel are engaging to the audience. And it's tricky because it's sort of hard, but potentially not that hard, you know, as well. Everyone's not too far away from producing great content as well. You don't necessarily need big production suites and videographers and all sorts of things as well now. Handheld, hold it up, record it, share it. Doesn't need to be over-engineered in relation to that, but just sort of thinking about the curation and creation and around that. That's a challenge.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
It's a big challenge. Like I want to go into this in a bit more detail because as you mentioned, I run this network, I run Rubber Band, I have my other business, Createfulness. I feel like I need to spend 80% of my day creating content, and it feels like it never stops. And I love it. I'm a creative person, right? So I can imagine it would be even more challenging for people that aren't creative people. Like, how can organizations, I guess, create content without it feeling hard? Like, how do we do it? Because it is really, if we don't have a marketing team doing it for us or a freelancer that we can afford to outsource to, it's endless.
Yeah, it's. I mean, one of the things that we've found as we've as we've developed through here, and to begin with, we had lots of content, and we're like, hey, we're going to stop just creating content. Over time, you learn a little bit more about what people want when they want it. So really, sort of your menu can narrow down a little bit. We often go back to those two emotions. I'm excited, I'm nervous, and use that as a bit of an anchoring point from a content perspective. I think the other thing I would say to in relation to content, it's quite sometimes to sort of overthink it. So let's take an example of picking one of those themes, excited. And you could think about your brand and say, okay, well, what is it that we do? What relates to our organization? What are some elements that we could bring to life that respond to that? Someone's excited about their career. We also know that someone going through that journey, if perhaps they've been accepted an offer and haven't started, we know that career is important. They know they want about career progression, advancement, learning, the culture of the organization, people, the elements that they want to hear more about. So you can pick one of those and say, how can we go and develop some content to do that? So I think sometimes it doesn't need to be long. Young graduates in your business at the moment are great and very happy to pick up a phone and record a message. If you think about asking someone sort of 3 questions that you could say, what are you working on? When was the last time you asked someone for help? And why did you ask them? Or what did you ask them?
Yeah.
And you just get a really honest answer to that. Yeah. And then you just package that up and share it out to people. And there's a lot of implied messaging in there. I love the sort of evidence being more valuable than a promise. So rather than saying we care about you or we do X, you could just say, hey, hear from such and such. Here's their journey. This is where and how they get help. And you can wrap elements around that and share it. Something that I will also share as a tip that comes through. We're regularly surveying and asking questions of graduates. The one thing, I've said 2 things that they talk about. The one that's top every single time is regular communication. It's the old chestnut that we all hear, whether you're a candidate and another here, or whether it's the bank, or whether it's ever. It's like, engage with me regularly. They just want regular communication. That sort of ghosting potential certainly exists. And if you've got 6 months that you need to keep engaged with them, or 9 months or 4 months, if you can try and say, okay, what are my moments in there? Or is it every month that we're going to engage with them, and stick with doing it on a monthly basis? They really, really value regular engagement. I don't know, I still haven't worked out if there's a great quote or not a great quote from somebody in one of those surveys that said, thanks very much. I love the campaign. I didn't look at much of it, but I felt that I belonged to something, and I knew I was valued and I mattered because it was arriving in my inbox.
Yeah, right.
I'm never quite sure how I feel about that one, but well, I'm like, the point being, I knew that I mattered and something was there, etc. So.
Yeah, because you generated that connection.
Yeah,
and absolutely, I'd agree. We had another comment from Bodine, and in terms of the first time making any particular content can be really overwhelming, and I completely agree with that. I loved a comment that Alana talked about in terms of experimentation, and you talked about not necessarily having to over-engineer, and that can be the really hard part. it does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of money. I mentioned, my experience, it's probably 80% of my day is spent on creating content. Like, where do you think the evidence is that running those activities or spending all of that time or spending money on improving your engagement, where's the evidence to say that's going to have an impact? I mean, I think we all assume that it will. Like, is there anything that's kind of driving that evidence?
Yeah, good. It's a good question, and of course, you're right. Everyone wants metrics, everyone wants data, everyone wants evidence that if I'm going to take this time, effort, and money, how does that play through? And look, you come back to your point you made earlier. Can you give me a black and white renege number? That's a very easy one, tangible one that I can look at and I can associate and connect some dollars to it. So that's why it's an important one. What we found a little bit too is not extending it out for the sake of it, but moving it more broadly from just some sort of branding and attraction exercise. I think of it more now actually as capability. I think of it as sort of cultural uplift, capability sort of influence. Thinking about, as well, if some of your engagement is extending to managers and mentors, that's a leadership play as well. If you could help someone, a mentor, have a better conversation with a graduate, or a manager have a better conversation with graduates as they're joining the organization, they're going to have better conversations with other people as well. You're just using early career talent as a in the flow category of talent to improve a skill that has huge value elsewhere in the organization.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to you don't want to get too sort of cute with it and more broadly thinking, but I think if I'm sitting down or I'm there with HR leaders and others and saying, hey, where's it going to come from? It's like, hey, remove it from just some sort of top of funnel, poster to attract our early careers talent and think, hey, how can we get them ready? Yes, there's the elements then of sort of brand awareness and advocacy. There's conversions and renege rates. There's work readiness and confidence. There's leader capability and influence that there is there. So I think there's lots of areas of value. And from our perspective, we'd look at tracking how people are thinking and feeling and being able to sort of demonstrate those. I would say as well, the other areas, early career is a fantastic area to try and pilot things. And, one of the things in doing this, and I think a great comment earlier, sorry, I'm just going to scroll up so I can make sure I reference my name. Paula, thank you. Paula made a reference there to Onboarder and Employment Hero. A lot of the campaigns we run, we use Onboarder to distribute that content. Customers that have got Onboarder, customers that haven't and don't want to buy technology. We include it as part of our solution. And through that, you're able to capture some great data and insights. And part of that is sort of, don't try and solve for it all. As they're working their way through the journey, ask the graduates, what are you thinking and feeling at the moment?
Yeah.
What would you like to know more of? You just ask the question and you then respond to that. So rather than having to sort of be so clever and design all of your content or think about that, just keep having those sort of regular little check-ins, and you learn a lot about what's the journey they're going on. And I think those insights as well feed into other investments that you'll be making. Before you spend hundreds of thousands on a big attraction campaign or something else, you can capture data insights, what's cutting through, what do they like, what are they engaged with, what are some of the themes and content, etc., that it works and resonates with them. And that really helps you do that without having to spend fortunes, perhaps before you're placing bigger bets elsewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it shows we do need to invest in our engagement activity, right? Regardless of how big that budget or how small it is. I think the days of running a graduate campaign and having an ad on Seek and hoping for the best are long gone, just like it's long gone in all talent acquisition. Yeah. Job advertising as your only source of talent attraction isn't going to work. But how do we actually talk to our leaders, our hiring managers, our bosses, for lack of a better word, to invest or to give us a budget for engagement activity? Like, how do we actually change the narrative around that? Like,
yeah,
how would you start if you were a talent professional? How would you open up that conversation?
I'm sure here as well that anyone in chat, I'm not just sort of trying to win advocacy and sympathy from that audience. Generally, when I've been out and spoken to heads of early career and others as well, most of them are really leanly run. Yeah, they do extraordinary things with not a lot.
Yeah.
So it's certainly, interestingly, a sort of category of talent that is high profile in its sort of poster appeal. You know, the chief executive always wants to come and speak to the graduates. You know, so it's got sort of visibility and profile that seems to punch above its funding level. Let's just say sometimes. So I think that certainly is a challenge. I think for me, the conversation, like, you're probably spending these dollars there as well. Yeah. So sometimes it's actually just spreading them out in different ways as well. If you're actually investing and some of your engagement actually is towards managers and mentors, that potentially, not that it comes from another budget, but it's solving a different problem. It's actually to the leader, rather than like, how much have I got to spend on attraction? It's actually thinking about that capability. It's thinking about the sort of the cultural influence. It's thinking about the retention of these individuals. It's thinking about the transition they make into the workforce and being productive, and how we keep them. So I think it's really just sort of being aware in your own context of all of those different elements. And I, difficult to know where you start from. It is a challenge for us. Typically when we have conversations with businesses, they haven't budgeted to use us or to partner with us. So when I say, where's the budget coming from? It's like, well, we haven't got that there yet at the moment. It's either coming from here, or I've got to go and ask for some more. And so I think certainly we're trying to, helpful for us just to say, as you're planning in early career approach and strategies, thinking about having that engagement as a budget item, as something that you're going to need to think about some spend on in some capacity is important. It doesn't have to cost lots and lots and lots of money. I think that's the nice thing about it. You can do quite a lot without too much. A little bit of creative help, a little bit of great content, a little bit of distribution, a little bit of technology. You can cover quite a lot of ground with people and do it in a very creative, engaging way. So it doesn't have to be huge expensive. I think it's dividends pretty good for what you've got to spend.
Absolutely. Well, I've just noticed that we have run over, but I want to continue the conversation. But and we'll stay online and we'll keep talking, because I'm fascinated by all of this. But what I would love to know now, Tim, for our audience, what would be, just to summarize, your 3 top tips for someone who is wanting to lift the impact of their engagement activity?
Okay, number 1, I knew this question was coming, so I've written these down. Here we go, because you're going to ask. 1, pick your moments that matter. I think it's hard to cover everything. So for you as an organization, say, what are the moments here along that journey that are most important for me? Second one is pick your themes. Think about what I've said there. I think they're excited. I'm excited. I'm nervous. How can you respond to both of those emotions using elements and examples of your brand, your DNA, because it's all there. And the third one was then get a little creative and have a bit of fun. Get a little team together. It is engaging and interesting and fun, and get employees sharing stories. So those would be the 3.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I love, we talked about that, the creative element, the experimentation. I think it was Alana that talked about that as well. That's been a really key takeaway for me too. I'll just pop up a little bit of praise for you, Tim. I'm not sure who that LinkedIn user is, but great content, Tim. How's that to end an episode? Love it. Thank you everyone out there. Actually, thank you for all the engagement today and all the really great comments and questions. It's really wonderful. If you do want to continue the conversation, just like I will be, please reach out to Tim. Tim's on LinkedIn. I will share his email address as well. I think someone might just pop that in the chat box now as well, if they can. Reach out to the Career Conversation. Jump onto the website. We will share those details too. A reminder, we will be having our major event on the 4th and the 6th of October, which is Bounce 3, the panel van. Details are on the website, rubberband.com.au/bounce3. Please come along. There is some content around early careers and particularly Gen Z. Tim, thank you so much for joining today. This has been amazing. I've really, really enjoyed catching up with you today.
Pleasure. Thank you for being here and having me. So really enjoyed it. Thanks so much, Eden.
Wonderful.
Thanks everyone for commenting.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Bye.